Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 151 of the Laravel News Podcast. We're so glad to have you here hanging out with us on air. I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Honey Badger. Today, Honey Badger is for monitoring all of your errors that come in unexpectedly, of course, because we're really good programmers around here, but errors still happen. So when they do, Honey Badger is going to be there to catch them and tell you all about them. Michael, how's it going, my friend?
Going well. You may notice that I'm at a higher vantage point today.
Indeed.
Got my
I have noticed.
new standing desk last week, which I hadn't set up when we
She's a
recorded North and South yet. It was sitting in boxes on the floor, but got it all together on Sunday night. Ended up going to bed at like 1 a.m. because I had to slow down once the kids went to sleep and go quietly. So I just put out a tweet. I posted a horrific photo of the underside of my desk because it was so late at night. I just kind of like plugged everything in and it was just like cables everywhere. So I have just this morning finished properly cabling my desk with the cable management rails and all that kind of stuff. So everything's cable tied and tucked away and nice and tidy. So there's like one cable, which is just the power cable from the power board going to the wall now. So it's good. I haven't, I only just got this, but I had like one of those tabletop standing desks when I was at my last job, and I would stand for hours at a time, but it's been 8 months now, 9 months since I was at that job.
It's like, you're probably feet are tired now.
My stamina was gone. Like the first day I thought, I remember doing this, it's easy. So I stood from like 8:30 until 12:30, and I thought, whew, I gotta sit here. So
I remember every year when I would come back from summer and I would have to start teaching again. Oh my gosh, those cables are terrible. Sorry. Okay, I'm back. But I remember every summer when I'd come back from summer break and then start teaching again, I'd just stand all day. And for the first 2 weeks, probably your back would just be like, it wasn't like a sore, like, oh, I hurt my back. It was a sore, like I'm using muscles I haven't used in 3 months.
Exactly right.
And that sore. And so I remember just being miserable. I'd be so tired every day I would get home just because it was like a workout to stand all day. You know what I mean? It's great for core strength, though. I mean,
it is fantastic. Yeah,
good stuff.
It's good just to use all those
I need
things,
to stand
especially
more.
after sitting for so long. Now being upright, and it's good. I had, most of you don't know this, I had a little day surgery a couple of weeks ago, and I went and got the all clear from that, so I can get back into things. I haven't really done any exercise. I haven't been in the gym since June. Kids got sick, mum got sick, I got sick, we all got sick, and then we went into a lockdown because we had some coronavirus in my state. So that then went for 7 days or whatever, and as a result I just fell out of the groove because that was 6 weeks not being at the gym, and then it got we got into the thick of winter, it got cold, and I just couldn't be bothered. So I said to my lovely wife, Monday, come hell or high water, I'm going back to the gym. So I went for a run yesterday, took the kids in the pram. Haven't done it since April. They've both put on some weight since then, and pushing the pram uphill at the start of the run was a bit of a challenge. I'm like,
that's awesome.
All these things adding up. So it's good. It's good. How's things with you? Kids are back at school.
Good.
Summer's over.
Yeah. Yep. Indeed. We actually had an 80s fun run today for our work. So we put this on. We sponsor or we raise money for the Ronald McDonald House, which is like parents can go to stay there when their kids are in the hospital and stuff. And we've benefited greatly from the Ronald McDonald House. And so we're raising money for that. And so we had this fun run. And so we had races for kids from 3 all the way up to like adults. And that was really fun. My 3-year-old was in first place.
Nice.
He was booking it first place, and then my 4-year-old, and then he stepped into a hole and fell.
Oh no! Is he all right?
Poor kid. He's fine.
Yeah.
He got back up and kept going, which I was happy about because I thought he was going to start crying. But he didn't cry, and he got second. He gained a spot back, so he was good. So all good. And then my 6-year-old got first place, my 8-year-old got second place, and my 10-year-old got first place in their races. Nice. So that was pretty fun.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so it was good. They were like, my 10-year-old was like full out sprint like the whole way. I was like, dude, you are going to die. You are going to die. And he was dead by the time he got back. So they're all in bed and sleeping soundly. They were all exhausted today. So yeah, it was great. Had a good day with that. But you had said at the top of the show that we're going to keep this one. I know you say never say it because whenever you say it, it jinxes us. So I'm not going to say it. but we're just going to get right into things, shall we?
Let's do it. Laravel 8.59 was released with a whole host of convenience methods, disallowing class morphs, merging defaults to validated inputs, quiet model, factory creation, and more. So first up here, Toby Zerner contributed a where morph to and an or where morph to methods on the Eloquent builder. Not much to add to that. You can just say where morph to, where morph to. So this is where you would previously do like a where and then the morphable name or the polymorph name. Now you can just give it the name of the key. So instead of going subject underscore type, subject underscore ID, you can just say where morphed to subject, comma, and then the model. And you don't have to worry about digging into those extra methods and tying yourself up. If you ever rename those columns, for example, you've got to go and change all of your queries to accommodate. So kudos to Toby for that one. And also with morphs, we had a contribution from Oliver Nybro, which is a new flag, a new prevention flag for models that disallows morphs without a morph map. So if you have a relation : enforce morph map method, pass it an array, user, arrow, and then the name of the model. When a model does not have a morph map registered, a class morph violation exception will be thrown. So this is all about enforcement of the mapping. So by default, Laravel will take the class name, so app models user as the morph name, but it's coming more common now, especially with some of the recent additions to the framework, to enforce mapping. So instead of having that class path in your database, you've got a key like user or subject or post or whatever. It just makes it easier to query if you're wanting to. If you've ever tried to like query a model name, sometimes you'll find that you get no results because you have to like escape the slashes and things like that.
Right, exactly.
And
quadruple backslashes.
Yeah, or if you've got external processes running or other applications that need to talk to the database that aren't aware of your Laravel models, it's easier just to have these keys referenced in there, and it's easy to work with. So this is about
easy to update too.
Of those things.
You had mentioned too.
Mm-hmm. Next up, Mohammed Haj contributed a merge method to merge items to validated inputs. So where you may have previously done this in like a form request or done some kind of array mapping and things like that, or array merge to add things into your validated input. Now when you do a validator make and you run your validation, you can then do a validator arrow safe to get all of the safe fields, the fields that have been validated, and dropping off everything else, and then arrow merge. And so if you wanted to have like an endpoint that creates a user, which implicitly creates a user of a specific type. So in this case, the role of admin will be automatically applied to that. And that will handle any cases where someone's like passing in invalid input or trying to, compromise your application by setting themselves up as an admin user. By merging, you will actually override those values and set your explicit default. So that's a cool contribution there from Mohammed. Next up, Tom Witkowski contributed an each method, which is similar to first on the assertable JSON class, to assert on each element of the current JSON object. So this is in your applications where you're doing some, in your tests, if you're doing like an assert JSON or assert has or anything like that, when you pass your closure into that method, you get an assertable JSON instance back for that item, and then you can call methods on that. So you could do, assert JSON has, and then pass it a closure, and then you can perform operations on that internal item. So this is adding an each. So if you have an array, for example, you could iterate over each item of that array using the assertable JSON each method. And it's just, again, those convenience features, those quality of life improvements, especially in testing. We're starting to see a lot of that coming into the framework as well. So thanks to Tom for that one. And lastly, in the high points for this one, Taylor Otwell, the creator of Laravel, contributed a create one quietly and a create many quietly method for model factories that can create one or many models and persist them to the database without model events. So by default, when you call on your model, say user : factory arrow create, that will run a database query, but it will also fire model events into your application. And if you're trying to seed a database for testing, if you're creating like 10 records or 20 records or 100 records, firing all those events and things that are listening to those events, it can can add, blow out the time that your test takes to run. So using the create one quietly, the create many quietly methods does that without firing those methods, those events into your application. So that makes things a little bit quicker in terms of actually scaffolding out your test and then being able to get results back. And it just makes that red, green, refactor, recycle a lot quicker. So kudos to that. That's what we've got here. But you can read the complete list of new features and updates in the diff below, not below, in the show notes. They will be. You can find them there.
Very nice. There is also a post about enforcing morph maps in Laravel. So this is what you had basically pontificated on a little bit when you talked about that enforcing for morph maps that Oliver had contributed. Mm-hmm. So Aaron Francis, our good friend Aaron Francis, who we've had over on our other podcast to talk about all the cool stuff he's working on, wrote up a blog post just to talk about what are exactly morph maps, what are the benefits of morph maps, and what are the benefits of enforcing a morph map. So he talks through all those different things. So with Michael, when he was talking about that, it just went whoosh, right over top of your head. This is a great article to take a look at. It's just a little tutorial, essentially. I don't know if it's a tutorial. Is it news? I'm not sure. What is it? I don't know what it is. It's a good FYI. It's a good learning. Yeah, tutorial, I suppose, right? On why you would use these particular technologies and how you utilize those. So there you go. So moving on to 8.6.1 then. Let's start at the very top here. We've got a new delete or fail model method. So class Ogner contributed a delete or fail method that makes it more convenient to handle model delete errors and less verbose than checking the return value of delete. So if you were to call model and then call arrow delete, the way that would send back to you, if it was successful or not, is it would send back a truthy value, a Boolean true or false, right? So if you wanted to
I think it returns
confirm that something had been deleted. Oh, does it?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it'll give you back the number of
maybe it does. I did not look at
the
pull request. That's possible. So that's what it would do. So maybe it would return a 0 in the case that it didn't delete it, or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. And so with this, you can just say model, delete, or fail. And what it'll do in that case, it'll say, yes, it deleted, or if it did not, it would throw an exception. And so now you can wrap that with a try catch instead of having to check it yourself. It just throws an exception. I think this probably goes along with what was talked about maybe a couple of weeks ago, where the update method, I think, would throw an exception as well, instead of having to check for a truthy value, like a true or a false. I think we talked about this maybe it was the last episode even. Yeah, maybe it's 8.58 that we talked about this. So with any case, kind of going along with that. Okay. RVX Lab contributed a assert model exists. I suppose that should be an assert model exists testing method to test whether a model exists in the database. So Taylor also added a assert model missing method. So assume that you might have a product and you say find one in your test, right? So you just have here's the product I have, and then you try and do a delete, and then you just say assert model exists. $product. So you just pass it in the eloquent model that you had earlier up on in your test, and it'll just probably, I'm assuming, it just uses the ID to check to see if that exists in your database. So assert model exists or assert model missing, rather than having to say assert database has and then passing in the name of the model and then ID equals and then the model ID that you had earlier up in your test. Just assert model exists, assert model missing. So convenient little helper testers.
Same kind of issue as those morph maps where your tests then have to have knowledge of the database names or of the table names.
Yeah, great. Good point. Sure.
Assert database missing, you can actually pass the model name. So if you go if you're trying to say assert database missing or assert database has user, you can pass user : class as a reference to your user model, and that'll work rather than having to know what the table name is.
User's table.
That decouples your test from your database structure a little bit as well.
Very good. So those. Okay, so then moving back to 8.60, because you might have noticed we skipped from 8.59 to 8.61. The only new feature of Laravel 8.60 was contributed by Italo, which is a value or fail method, which gets a single column's value from the first result of a query or throws an exception. So maybe you've had before where you do something like grab me this user and then grab me the first vote that they have, and then get me the value of that of that column, right? And so it basically is first or fail votes, which is like grab me that thing, and then arrow votes. So grab the column then. So now what you can do is you can say, grab me the value or fail, and then you just pass the name of the column that you're looking for, and it will grab the first result and grab that value or throw an exception. So it's just, it makes it a little bit less cumbersome to do those couple pieces there. Kind of wraps it up conveniently into a nice little value or fail method, which I will have my guys use this all the time because we do this. We constantly have this first, and then and then arrow, and then grab this other thing, and then check to see if it's null or check to see if it exists. Now you can just do value or fail. Really nice. Okay. Tim McDonald also contributed a new update where tests can utilize the null logger. This is on pull request 38785. I'm not exactly sure what the big difference was here, honestly. Maybe I can come back to it after I've had a chance to read through it. But in any case, you can do it. There's now also this was contributed by Tim Fevins, contributed a -- policy flag, which is also included with the -- all flag while creating a method. So when you're, sorry, not a method, when you're creating a model. So right now you can do PHP artisan make model, and you can do things like migrations and seeds and all that. And with this now you can say make : model -- policy, and that'll also create a policy for whatever the model is that you're making. So like, for example, you'd say make : model post -- policy. It would say, okay, go ahead and create the post model and go ahead and create the policy as well. Now, if you do -- all, it will create the migration, the factories, and now also it will include the policy for you when you pass that -- all flag. So good job on that, Tim Fevins. That is it. That is for 8.60 and 8.61. Okay, we've got a big release next here, Michael. Big. What do we got?
So this is the last of our release news updates. Livewire is getting a lot of quality of life improvements in the latest 2.6 release. This is the biggest Livewire release since version 2 dropped at, I guess it was Laracon in last year, right? Laracon summer last year?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This release is extra special because the majority of these updates were completely PR'd and driven by the community. Special shout out to Josh Hanley for developing basically half of all of these things and helping out with most of them. The full release notes and links to every feature, fix, and PR is included. We're going to hit the high notes because there's a lot of stuff here. So let's jump in. We have a new boot lifecycle hook, deep model data binding, which piques my interest. We have wireable objects, array targeted loading indicators, warn when multiple root elements are present, private methods and props available via this, custom wire loading delay durations, multiple paginator support. Goodness, this goes on and on. Support with redirect with, cleaner query strings, browser back button cache config, blade component layout love, support for union types, support adding removing public properties on deploy, support datetime immutable and carbon immutable. And that is it. That is a lot of stuff.
Oh, that's all. That's all it is. Just those couple things.
That's just all it is.
Each one of those has at least like 3 paragraphs underneath it too.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's like
it took me a bit of scrolling. It took me a bit of scrolling to get past the headings for each other. So Caleb Porzio, who is the author, the creator of Laravel Livewire, has put this together. I didn't do it justice, Caleb. I'm sorry about that. But there is a lot to go in here. And if you would like to know more about this new release, do check out the post. We'll have a link to it in the show notes. And hey,
there's some really nice stuff in here. Yeah.
Anytime you are making huge changes to your application like this, your code may end up with errors. Even code that is written by an amazing developer such as yourself. And when those errors happen, it's nice to know that Honeybadger has your back. Honeybadger makes you a DevOps hero by combining error, uptime, and check-in monitoring into a single, easy-to-use platform. They'll send you alerts in real time with all the context you need to see what's causing the error and where it's hiding so you can quickly fix it and get on with your day. The included uptime and cron monitoring also lets you know when your external services are having issues or your background jobs go missing or silently fail. If you check out honeybadger.io, you'll find out how Star, Josh, and Ben created a 100% bootstrap monitoring solution, which is important because as a self-funded business, they only answer to you, the developer, rather than venture capital overlords. And you know what? I love Honeybadger. I was sitting having my lunch the other day and I got all of these notifications hit Slack because one of my applications, it was running on Vapor. So I assume Vapor just had a, but it just said could not find any commands in the Vapor namespace. And So I got a whole bunch of alerts, and then they all fixed themselves up. But I knew that it had happened, and that's the key thing because it prompted me to go look. So definitely check out honeybadger.io to become the DevOps hero your business deserves. Thanks, Honeybadger.
The DevOps hero you are born to be. Hey, folks, we've also got, as we transition into the packages section here, this is a pretty cool one. This is rich text for Laravel. So if you've ever used the Tricks editor, which is the Basecamp, like full, what is it?
WYSIWYG.
It's the Basecamp sort of WYSIWYG. Yeah, thank you. Text editor. And so I think that Laravel Nova uses this. It's really, really excellent and works wonderfully. But some of the times when you're going to use it, you have to follow like a tutorial to figure out how you set it up. It's easy to integrate into the front end, but then how do you store it in the back end? And then how do you retrieve it out of the back end? How do you query for those, to do like full text search across those? And how do you display it? And how do you handle attachments? And how do you, all those things, right? All those things that you have to figure out. Now you don't have to figure those out anymore because Rich Text Laravel integrates the Tricks editor with Laravel, and it's inspired by the Action Text gem from Rails. So here's what it provides. Everything necessary to store, create, and update rich text with the Tricks editor. So it has a database schema design to make it easy to associate rich text with models. It handles images, attachments, and uploads. It has support for Tricks content attachments. It retrieves content objects such as attachments and links, and it has plain text rendering. So it's flexible in that you can use it in the recommended way, or you can use it in a more lightweight way that allows you to store rich text on any modal. Or sorry, not any modal, any model. So you don't have to give it a separate table. You could just say, this is just going to be in a column on an existing model, throw it in there, no problem. So you can use the provided package database structure where all rich content is stored outside the model with associated rich content, or you can use the packages as rich text content trait to cast a rich content field onto any model, which is a really nice way to do it. So they've got some code in here talking about how you could do each one of those two options. Really simple, really nice. The next time I need to integrate Tricks, I'm going to do this because I feel like it's always like a day-long thing to try and remember how to do it, right? Unless you're using, again, like Laravel Nova. Laravel Nova just kind of handles it for you. But this is pretty nice. So very, very cool. Thank you for whoever it was that made this. I'm going to go look because it doesn't have it. Tony SM. Tony Messias.
Good on you.
Tony.
All
right. Thanks, Tony. Appreciate it, man.
Next up, we have, is this going to be a trick name? Kagillo is a set of open source Blade components for the Laravel framework. The package doesn't require a CSS framework or JavaScript resources to function and provides the following components. You have an alerts component for working with Laravel session flashing, a device component, which gives you the ability to hide or show depending on the user's device or user agent. You have an error component, which is an easy way to work with Laravel's error message bag, an icon component to easily insert SVG files, a logout component to log out users using a safer post request, and a meta component for setting several open graph and meta elements used by social media to provide previews of your content. So there's a whole host of here. These are just Blade components that you can use in your application instead of having to do all of these things per application. Every time you do it, you can just use like an x-logout, which will put in your logout form. You can use x-meta, which will give you a whole host of open graph for your primary meta tags, your open graph / Facebook and Twitter tags as well. The documentation can help you get started and has examples for each Blade component, which you can learn more about and get full installation instructions, as well as a link to the source code on GitHub in a link in the show notes.
Very nice. Up next, we have a tool called Skipper. So Skipper is a powerful visual editor for Laravel Eloquent. So I'm going to try and sum this up. So imagine you have a tool that allows you to create a visual model of your project with a couple clicks. It will also give you the ability to generate all model and migration files from that model without any lines without having to type any of the code yourself. And then you can change the model at any time in the future and get updated migrations at the same moment. So that's what this is. You can start with an existing project and you can point Skipper at it and it'll say, okay, give me a visual representation of the database structures and kind of how this project is all set up together. And there you go. It'll has the little picture for you. And then you can modify those values and then update your code. So pretty nice. It saves you a lot of time. It decreases the demand on your developers. If you have like a junior on the team and you're giving them a greenfield project or something, this is what they mentioned as one of the benefits. I'm not so sure. I mean, I'm fine with generated code. I mean, I use it all the time, right? Where we have like stub files and stuff that happens. Those are generated files for you, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, I kind of would hope that the people who are generating those files also know why those files are there and how to modify them if they don't meet the needs. So one of the said benefits here is this decreases the demand on your coders' skills. Like we all want good employees, but sometimes you can't find them. So you don't have to do it anymore because this will do it for you. You just give it to your junior programmers.
Yep.
I'm not sure if maybe push on that a little bit. But
how are they going to learn? They got to learn somehow, Jake.
They got to learn somehow. It's true. I do like that it gives you a good visual representation of things straight from your Laravel project, which is pretty nice. And it also allows you to understand and manage large applications easily as well, right? So if you have something that's more than just a couple tables, like this would be great to be able to just get a quick visual representation without having to spend half a day in some flowchart library thing that puts it all together for you. In any case, if this sounds like something interesting to you, you should definitely check it out. Apparently it's been out there for a while, and there's also a course that goes along with it if you're interested. They're giving 25% off for people who use the coupon code Laravel News. So check that out. That'd be great.
Excellent. Next up, we have Crayon, which is an open source CRM built with Laravel. So CRM is a customer relationship management tool and is an app that is built with both Laravel and Vue.js. As a CRM application, Crayon provides complete customer lifecycle management and extensibility using familiar Laravel concepts. You have the ability to convert opportunities into revenue, manage customer interactions, granular access controls, activity management, visual leads with a Kanban style, cards and UI, unlimited custom fields, allows you to manage products and services, contact management, a CRM dashboard, and it allows you to extend everything via plugins. Crayon also supports package development, which allows you to extend the CRM using familiar Laravel concepts such as configuration console commands, controller middleware, and so on. To get started with the application installation, check the installation docs. Crayon does require at least 4 GB of RAM and PHP 7.3 or higher, and as a developer, the source code also includes 2 Docker setups, allowing you to develop features using either Docker with PHP 8 or version 7.4. If that is something of interest to you, you can learn more about the app, get full installation instructions, and view the source code on GitHub. We'll have links to that in the show notes.
Very nice. Next, we have Laravel API response helpers. So if you've been developing an API, you may have felt this challenge of how do I make sure that I get consistent API responses throughout your Laravel application. So how do you make sure that you're always responding in a way that is going to be an expected way that the person who's consuming it is going to know this is the typical way that they respond and I can count on it being in this format. So that's a challenge. There are sort of standards for doing that. There's a couple different ones. The ones that I happen to use is JSend, which I think Samantha Geitz mentioned, I don't know, a long time ago, 4 or 5 years ago, something at like Laracon, Louisville. So that's what we use, JSend, pretty sweet. But this Laravel API response helpers gives you the following methods: response not found, respond with success, respond okay, respond unauthenticated, forbidden, error created, no content. And then what you can pass in is a message or contents. And so then what it does is it sends through the correct HTTP request. So you don't have to remember which one is the correct HTTP request or HTTP response code. And then it also gives you a consistent like JSON payload to send back as well. So if you're developing an API and you struggle with this and this has been a problem for you, definitely check this one out, Laravel API response helpers. This next one, I don't even know if we should do this one. I haven't heard great. I don't know. What do you think about this one, Michael?
It sounds dodgy. The person that created it looks very suspicious, wearing a beanie.
I agree. He I don't know. But why don't you tell us about it? We can be the judge.
I'll tell you about it, and then our listeners can tell us if they really wanted to hear about it or not.
All right, let's do it.
Laravel Defibrillator is a package to keep application tasks running at a normal rhythm. It is one that was built by me.
Oh, Michael! Yay, Michael!
Everybody's favorite human, Paul Redmond, messaged me and he said, "I think we need to write a post about this." I said, "You do what you got to do." But the package was born out of some frustration that we had with Then Ping Me, where if the database went away or there was some error or something like that, and we got backlogged in processing jobs, we would keep piling on and adding things on. So if there was an error in the application, which triggered an exception, which triggered that job to start again. And that, we had this cascading effect where we would keep retrying the errors, but we would also keep running our scheduled task, which would keep pushing more things onto the queue, which would keep erroring. So the defibrillator, and I went really far off the deep end in the naming for this thing. The defibrillator allows you to essentially keep tabs on your application to make sure that it has a normal rhythm. If you're expecting something to run every 60 seconds, this will help you make sure that you're doing that every 60 seconds. And what it does is, if you consider a scheduled task that communicates with your application users on a regular interval, that scheduled task is something that queues notifications to our users based on some condition within the application. And in a normal situation, you might have 3 or 4 or 10 or 20 or whatever notifications going out. And they're dispatched within a few seconds, and then it all starts off again in another minute when your scheduler runs. But an application error causes the application to spiral out of control and queue notifications back up. The database doesn't get updated to know that it's done something. So, where you would flag those notifications as having been sent, because there's a lag in doing that, the scheduled task runs again, and they try and send again. So suddenly your queue's got tens of thousands of jobs in it, and you're stuck in a cycle that you can't keep up with. You can throw more processes at it, more workers. You can scale up your SQS workers and things like that, but you're still going to have issues. So essentially what this does is, within your scheduled task, you can call the defibrillator and say, like, does my application have a normal rhythm? Have I... And essentially what that does is checks to see, is there an entry in the cache for this task that is active? And essentially what active means is that it is just storing a timestamp. Is that timestamp in the future? If it's not, what will happen is that you defibrillate your application, which pushes that timestamp out and then returns early from your scheduled task so that it doesn't kick off again, allowing your database the chance to catch up, your other queue workers to finish doing what they're doing. If it does have a normal rhythm, then it processes the rest of your job and it defibrillates again, and it pushes that timestamp out. And so keeping this sort of carrot bouncing along in front of you means you're always chasing that carrot, for lack of a better terminology, I suppose. You can determine, should I send your application? Should you send notifications using the defibrillator? You can increase or decrease the interval between this thing. If you've got a task that runs every 10 minutes, well, you don't want your cache key to be expiring in 90 seconds, because obviously that's going to cause it to not run when it should. So if that's something that's interesting to you, I've had this issue come up, as I said, with Zenping. I had it a number of times at my last job, where we had different things that would just cascade onto themselves because of that issue. So definitely check that out if it's something of interest. If the package is useful to you, let me know. Hit me up on Twitter.
Very nice. Thank you, Mr. Dorinda. Yeah, awesome. Love it. All right, we've got a tutorial here written by Chris Fidao. If you don't know Chris Fidao, if that name doesn't sound familiar, this is the Server for Hackers guy. He's also one of the 2 dudes that built Chipper CI, along with Mr. David Hemphill. And I feel like he also has... Does he have a Docker thing too?
Yep.
Maybe he has a Docker thing.
He's got a Docker course.
Okay.
He's got a whole bunch of stuff.
Docker course. He's got all sorts of stuff. So Chris has been working with AWS professionally, quote unquote, since about 2015. And he talks through in this blog post a lot of the different mistakes that he's made over time. There's so much to know about AWS that it's really easy to miss like important pieces about it. And so he goes through a collection of the most commonly missed things when using AWS with Laravel Forge. So he talks first about CPU credits and how you can cost yourself more or less based on which server size you're using, T2, T3, T4G, and how these CPU credits work. So for example, the T3 small server size gains 24 credits per hour for a max of 576 credits. However, if you go 20% above CPU usage, you start using CPU credits in addition to the cost that it would cost you. Yeah, luckily the cost is generally low, so you might not even notice the increase on your bill, but it's best not to leave your server running at that speed, at that pace, right? So you can monitor your CPU credits and burst usage in the CloudWatch metrics for given instances, or with the EC2 control panel under the monitoring tab, or you can use Vapor. There you go. So not using cheaper servers. So he's saying using the cheaper instance might not always mean that it's better, I think.
No.
Right, exactly. And so he talks about what are the best ones to use. So he says that there's the newer T4G instance types. These use ARM processors and are generally the cheapest. The CPUs are fast, but the ARM CPUs are cheaper in general, and so AWS passes that savings off to you. And they work great on Forge, so he highly recommends those. Ignoring IOPS. This is a pernicious mistake. Not checking IOPS usage. This is input output, I believe. Processes. Yeah, hitting disk volume limits. It's not a super obvious thing, but it's similar to hitting CPU like bursts. Hitting disk limits is really easy to do when you're running your database on the same server. So that's something to check out and think about. And he talks about that. GP2 volumes is a recommendation. GP3 volumes he talks about in here as well. And then he has what metrics you should be watching to know if you're using your disk too much or how to follow those metrics in CloudWatch. Or if you have been watching Mr. Dorinda, you could look at and throw some of that stuff into Grafana, which is pretty cool too. So Michael's got some pretty freaking sweet dashboards out there that he's built in Grafana. And so you can learn about that on a blog post that he wrote up. And he's got that linked in his Twitter too. Maybe you can put that in the show notes as well. Cool. Very cool. Yeah. So in any case, it's just some interesting things to be looking at here. If you're a Forge user and you think this, and you're using AWS as your server provider of choice, this would be something worth spending a little bit of time looking through. All right.
Perfect.
All right.
The last thing
we got this other one? Is this from the last one left over?
This is.
I think this one actually forgot to get moved into a different spot. So we could talk about this. I think I just forgot to move it up. I don't think it's a community link.
The last thing we have here, Laravel Fluent is a package by Boris Lepikin that provides an expressive way to define your model attributes. The package automatically builds casts at runtime and it gives you native auto-completion of model properties. So this is using a Fluent trait, and it supports all native PHP types and Laravel primitive casts. So you can define these things using attribute syntax, so PHP 8 attribute syntax, and handles casts. It handles decimals. It allows you to do all the good things that you know and love using native class properties rather than the cast array on your Laravel model. So if you would like that kind of thing, it makes it a lot nicer. As I said at the top there, it gives you a better native auto-completion because you don't have to rely on plugins and things like that to read data out of the cast array. You've got real properties on your Eloquent model. So you've got the detection of, whether it's a collection or if it's a float or it's an integer. Like you get that proper completion within your editor. And then because your editor will know, for example, that you have a collection cast, that you can access the collection methods directly and you get the type ahead and the auto completion, all of that good stuff. So definitely check this package out. As I said, it does support all native PHP types and the Laravel primitive casts as well. So thanks to Boris for that one.
Nice. All right. Hey, that's everything, man. And so now I can say it at the end of the show, which you were like, hey, let's keep it tight today. So we're a tight 38 minutes and 42 seconds. So I think we're doing good. Should we wrap this one up?
Let's do it.
All right. Episode 151, folks. Show notes can be found at podcast.laravel-news.com/ is that right?
Podcast.laravel-news.com.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. Yep. /151. Sorry. If you like the show, we'd really appreciate it if you'd rate it up in your podcatcher's choice. 5 stars would be greatly appreciated. Hit us up on Twitter at Michael Dorinda, at Jacob Bennett, or at Laravel News if you have questions. And until next time, my friends, we will see ya. Bye-bye.
Bye.